Hi, my name is Jeff Lindholm. I'm a sales engineering manager with SUSE. I want to welcome you to our SUSECON session on OpenSUSE Leap to SLES, more than the sum of its parts. I'd like to introduce myself and our speaker for today that's joining us, Udo.
Yes, welcome also from my side. As you can read, my name is Udo Diedel, and my background, actually, I'm a teacher of mathematics and physics. I've been around for quite some time with Linux and open source, and I also have presented in the past at SUSECON. It has been a while, and I'm happy to present again with Jeff today. At the moment, I have kind of two jobs. I work at a big data center as a so-called enterprise architect, and during my leisure time, I do publish articles and do present at conferences.
And my name is Jeff Lindholm. I manage sales engineering for SUSE out of Detroit, Michigan. I've been with SUSE for almost 19 years, working as an evangelist since 2004 in terms of working with our enterprise customer base and being an OpenSUSE community supporter. For today's session, we're going to be talking a bit about the interoperability of SUSE Linux Enterprise Server and OpenSUSE Leap, and the experience that the community and SUSE has put together around having a community-focused developer distribution that's compatible between the OpenSUSE development community and the SUSE Linux Enterprise commercial offerings. Today, we're going to talk a bit about the DevOps experience and start with a review of the OpenSUSE community releases, specifically looking at OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, which is a rolling release that incorporates the latest, greatest, newest upstream open source technology. And then we have the OpenSUSE release around Leap 15, which is aligned with the development lifecycle of SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Udo will then talk through some of the enterprise considerations of where enterprise use cases come into play, and we'll then transition into a conversation around interoperability and supported migration use cases. We'll finish up with a demo and a proposal from SUSE to the OpenSUSE community. So when we look at DevOps technology, SUSE has been working in the DevOps marketplace for many years, looking at our offerings anchored with SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, but complemented by the solution portfolio that encompasses our application delivery tools, and being able to build out DevOps-enabled processes that allow for flexibility, modularity across the portfolio. So if you look at repeatable processes and organizations building up development pipelines, continuous integration scenarios, what we're really focused on here is repeatable process. And when you think about this from a developer perspective, they may be packaging an app, or they may be developing code, at which point they may package that code and basically do their planning and development on SUSE Linux Enterprise or OpenSUSE, at which point there's a deployment model that can be used depending upon the type of application and what kind of consumption the application requires. You look at the test and release tooling, we're quite pluggable using common tools like JenkinsX, GitLab, and there's instrumentation and operations tooling that has been made available with the likes of SUSE Manager, as well as our application delivery frameworks. When we think about the build technologies that are used to drive this experience, the Open Build Service, as well as other foundational tools around container creation of RPMs, and packaging of software is another component that is provided as part of the portfolio. Today, SUSE and OpenSUSE work very closely together in terms of SUSE looking at OpenSUSE as our upstream development environment. We develop in a community-first, upstream-first development scenario where we ensure mutual collaboration. Contributions are sent upstream to the various communities, looking at everything from the Linux kernel to desktop environments like GNOME, KDE. And ultimately, the upstream innovations will come back into OpenSUSE and filter into the enterprise products provided by SUSE over time. There's a number of common elements that are core to all OpenSUSE and SUSE distributions, and this includes things like management tooling. So the YAST installation and management framework, the tools that allow us to easily customize and configure the instances that are being deployed, whether you're building them by manual instances, by booting off the ISO and working through the installer, or creating images that might be used in a public cloud environment or in a virtualization infrastructure. We have a consistent build tooling that's used both for OpenSUSE as well as SUSE Linux Enterprise, looking at our build service technology. And through this process, there's a high level of integration around our OpenQA system, which provides for stability and testing as we go through the process. When we look at the OpenSUSE distributions, there are two discrete distributions that have been in the marketplace for the last 4.5 years. OpenSUSE Tumbleweed is a rolling release distribution that picks up the latest, greatest technology with respect to upstream package support, latest innovations in the Linux kernel. What you find in this distribution that is built and rebuilt continuously on a rolling release schedule is a continuously updated and tested, unit-tested deliverable that's perfect for upstream development and power users. When we look at use cases for the enterprise or for the OpenSUSE Leap stable distribution, this is a regular release distribution that is synchronized in its release schedule with the SUSE Linux Enterprise codebase. It does share common elements of source code, and it's perfect for administrative tasks, enterprise developers, and general purpose users that might not be looking for the what I would call the absolute latest, greatest capability. They're looking for something a bit more stable. When we look at the details around Tumbleweed, OpenSUSE Tumbleweed really focuses on building on a code base called OpenSUSE Factory. OpenSUSE's main code base is the factory distribution, and that is where we will periodically take a cut of the factory distribution and package it into Leap and ultimately into the release that is SUSE Linux Enterprise. This is done in partnership with the OpenSUSE community, and the alignment of OpenSUSE Leap along with SUSE Linux Enterprise has been really in motion for about 4.5 years. So when you think about Tumbleweed as a rolling release, there are no quote-unquote patch releases in terms of what I would call regimented maintenance updates. It's really about Tumbleweed snapshots and package updates, because if you go to run a zipper distribution upgrade or a zipper upgrade as part of your daily activity, for those that are addicted to patching and want to have the most up-to-date packages from a version control perspective at all times, the zipper tool will typically find hundreds, if not 1,000+ packages that are available for update at any particular release point. When we think about OpenSUSE Leap, this is aimed at developers, and ultimately you think about sysadmins, general purpose Linux desktop usage. It does have a defined lifecycle with annual releases. It is directly aligned to SUSE Linux Enterprise from a version control perspective, and it is server ready, meaning that today we do have the capability of migrating an instance from OpenSUSE Leap to SUSE Linux Enterprise as part of a documented migration path that has been available for a couple of years now. When we think about the source code from SUSE Linux Enterprise being used in Leap, there is a direct alignment between the versioning, looking at the introduction of OpenSUSE Leap 42.1 with the release of SLES 12, and most recently the alignment of OpenSUSE Leap 15.1 being released on the 22nd of May, being aligned with SLES 15 SP1. We look at the Leap distribution timeframe. Leap typically has an estimated shelf life of about 36 months of maintenance with regards to security updates, and it will typically have patch errata released on a regular basis that can be followed from the OpenSUSE mailing list. A lot of cool stuff in Leap that goes beyond the components and the contents of SUSE Linux Enterprise. You think about SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, we're, from an enterprise perspective, promoting supportability, certifications, availability, and structured choice, right, in terms of helping our customers have the best of breed available to host their mission-critical infrastructure. If we think about Leap, you do have the capability of having multiple desktop window manager environments looking at KDE, other window managers. We do have support for Linux containers and containerized applications. This includes subsets of the Leap community and work that's being done with Cubic around SUSE's container as a service platform. We also have a very relevant and up-to-date set of developer tooling looking at structured development environments, compilers. And ultimately, the functionality of the distribution is very similar. There are package differences, though, looking at how things are packaged and looking at defaults and selection. If we look at the committed distro alignment, the nomenclature that I discussed earlier around Core 15 being the common code base for both Leap 15 and SLE 15 really articulates the fact that the source code is really being leveraged in most cases to keep consistency between the SUSE Linux Enterprise environment and Leap 15 to the point where we could actually migrate from Leap to SLE as part of a support subscription if there was a customer desire to promote their development environment to a production use case. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Udo to talk a little bit about why SUSE Linux Enterprise and focus in that area.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, after all the details you have heard about Tumbleweed and Leap, you may wonder, is there actually a need for something else, a different distribution? And the purpose of this slide actually is to summarize what are the demands which are fulfilled by SUSE Linux Enterprise. Jeff mentioned the term server-ready for Leap, and if you think about enterprise-ready, this actually goes beyond. It starts, of course, with stable code, which creates a stable environment, which is the fundamental building block for creating services which are highly available up to the extent there's no outage actually for the customer. But there are also things like getting access to security fixes in a timely manner that you are able to install and apply them, first of all, to secure your systems, but also to comply with either regulations from the government in order to pass certifications, or just to fulfill the contracts you have with your customers. And of course, you want to have access to those fixes not only for 36 months, you may want to have it much longer because the business application you're running on top or the contracts you have with your customers actually last for 5+ years or even longer. So what you're looking for is having a supported product for 5+ years easily, and not very seldom, actually, really 10 years. And last but not least, you want to be able to run a multi-vendor stack where very actually before you buy the stuff, you do know things do work together, they will serve the purpose, and in case there are problems, you have defined working mechanisms to reach out to professional commercial support in order to fix the problem, to avoid downtime for your customers. So it's a different focus here for enterprise, and those requirements are not new, and they haven't changed. It doesn't really matter if those things are run on-site, where you take care of everything yourself, or if you go to a public cloud, where part of the stack is provided by somebody else. Now, on top of those already challenging demands, there are already new things facing to SLE in the past 3 years. Next slide, please. And this one actually, on the next slide, this one summarizes what actually was the stretch which triggered a transformation of SLE itself. I'm not going to go into the details. What does it mean? What was the transition, the transformation from SLE 12 to SLE 15? The purpose of this slide is to tell you that the SLE family is supposed to provide services to infrastructure, which we would call traditional, where people talk about boxes and cables and servers and DBAs and sysadmins, but also to a community or to customers who are much more API-driven, who talk about blueprints, recipes, infrastructure as a code, or focus much more on the higher levels on the technology stack where actually the business application is running, which provides the service, which actually creates the money which you want to have. So with this multimodal IT, which is a kind of a further development of what Gartner calls bimodal IT, SLE itself has transitioned, has changed. Next slide, please. And one of the effects of this one was actually the setup of new products like the SUSE CAST platform or SUSE Enterprise. Jeff has mentioned before that Leap and SLE, so the closer SLE family, they do share the core and the same sources. And if you look at this slide, you see at the bottom that this shared core actually goes beyond just the normal SLE family. It also covers the new products which were put in place to satisfy the demands of customers who are talking about software-defined infrastructure. The point I want to make is that this link between Leap and SLE actually is part of a much bigger picture and puts Leap in connection to a much bigger ecosystem which serves traditional infrastructure, traditional customers, as well as software-defined infrastructure or customers of the new world. Next slide, please. On this slide, you will find some information about the stretch SLE was facing and still is facing. I'm not going to read through all the details. You see on the left-hand side traditional infrastructure, on the right-hand side the software-defined part, and you could pick any arbitrary line on the left-hand side, and you will find the opposite of the content on the right-hand side. And this is nothing we really made up ourselves. This is really reality. So it is a big stretch and illustrates the challenge that SLE had to master and did with the conversion to a much more modular approach with SLE 15. Now, in the title, we are saying that SLE and SLES is much more than the sum of its parts. One point I have already mentioned, this common code base goes beyond traditional SLE products. It connects SLE also with things like SUSE storage. But there's more to it. There are more binding links. There's more clue. And this is actually mentioned on the next few slides. Next slide, please. So a very important item here is the package hub. It's basically a software repository which gives you access to open source software, which is quite popular, but not already shipped as part of the SLE distribution or not part of a tech preview. But you still would like to be able to test it. Before Package Hub, this actually meant, and this is illustrated on the next slide, you may need to hunt for source RPM yourself, try to get it compiled without error, try to get it installed without error, hoping it does what it's supposed to do, and not actually creating any undesired side effects or breaking things. This whole pain actually is taken away from you with Package Hub, and this is unrelated to SLE. So this already is something somebody else took care of it. You don't have to worry about that one. But actually, Package Hub provides much more service than just mastering the technical challenges which I have described. Next slide, please. There are a few key items mentioned here. And first, I want to draw your attention to the middle, which says SUSE approved. So we did already say that, yes, you will get a binary package which you can install. You can be assured that there was already some kind of quality assurance behind when this package was created. Otherwise, it wouldn't be SUSE approved. This is facilitated by the fact that Package Hub uses the same methods, tools, processes, which are also use great packages for Tumbleweed and Leap, which we have touched on earlier. So there's nothing reinvented. So the same proven industrialized methods are used to create packages for the Package Hub. Plus, you can be assured that they won't conflict with existing packages or software installed on the SLE instance or create any undesired side effects. Very important, especially in the enterprise business, is that they don't sacrifice your support contract. This means if you have a problem on your instance, SUSE support will not turn away saying, sorry, we can't do anything, your system is tainted because you have packages installed which are not part of the SLE distribution. And this is a very crucial fact because this allows you actually to test things in a serious and enterprise-ready manner. Something which... Yes,
go ahead. was going to say, one thing I would add here, Udo, is that if you look at Package Hub, it really is the delta between what is Leap and what is SUSE Linux Enterprise. So if you look at the package selection that goes on in the SUSE Linux Enterprise world, there are a number of things that are in OpenSUSE Leap that are not in SLES. So if you look at KDE Desktop, for example, you look at alternative technologies where we picked what SUSE considers to be enterprise supportable, but there may be emerging technology in Leap for the same function under a different package name or a branch of the same community, right? And ultimately, we're basically making those extra packages available for enterprise consumption in what I would call a safe manner that doesn't sacrifice the support, as you said. But it really is that focus of the delta of the difference between Leap and SLES, so that the packages of Leap are available to the SUSE Linux Enterprise community so that they can be used from a community support perspective without sacrificing any of the service level agreements or support commitments that SUSE is providing. Thanks.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff. Maybe two more things. As with a valid subscription of SLES, you have, of course, access without additional cost to the package hub. I think this is quite important. And plus another thing which was one of the pains I felt and some of my colleagues felt before package hub. If you have downloaded something and you tested it, then it could have been the case that 6 months down the road or 1 year down the road, so this package was not available or the maintainer was not available anymore. This is not the case with this package hub. It is already, as Jeff mentioned, by providing the delta between Leap and the enterprise ready, which does mean as long as the product is alive and supported, you will find the package which you can install there as well on package hub. So lots of the pains, technical and non-technical, are taken away from you by package hub, plus giving you or creating a good link between Leap as a server-ready distribution and SLES as ready for the enterprise. Next slide, please. So most of the things which are listed here, we already touched on. It does not invalidate your SLES support commitments. There's no packaging conflicts. There are different signing keys used for the package or package hub, which has technical and non-technical reasons, but also has the positive side effect to easily identify from which source they are coming from, plus a naming scheme which is aligned with the version number of, the versioning of Leap and SLES. Now we have talked about enterprise, we talked about the common code base, we talked about package hub as a link between Leap and SLES. So you may wonder, and Jeff touched on that one earlier, if it is actually possible that Leap and SLES are so close that you can actually convert one to another. Excuse me. Next slide, please. And this is a leading question. Yeah, and with that one, actually, I would like to hand over to Jeff.
Yeah, no problem. So SUSE has published instructions on how to migrate a Leap 15.1 instance to SLES 15 SP1, given that the package sources are compatible. It is possible to use our registration subsystem to add a subscription to that server or that instance in a virtual machine or in the public cloud, and then work through a migration process to convert a Leap 15.1 instance to SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 15. High-level steps, as mentioned below, would include the precursor of having a subscription, which we have SUSE Linux Enterprise Server subscriptions available for evaluation on the website. We have free developer subscriptions available. We also have paid enterprise Linux subscriptions available through typical routes to market, looking at cloud providers, hyperscalers like Google, AWS, Microsoft around the Azure, public cloud, as well as working through distribution. Once you have your subscription and you've got your activation code, you have the ability to install a package called SUSE Connect and register that server, at which point there's a couple of transactions that are run to add the SUSE Linux Enterprise signed software repositories, and then go through what's called a zipper distribution upgrade and cleaning up the remaining packages after the fact. We're going to spend a few minutes in a migration demo, and we'll walk you through this process with an actual Leap instance and show you how customers can migrate an instance from Leap 15 to SLES 15. Great. I really appreciate you guys paying attention to the demonstration. I hope that added a little bit of value in terms of the demonstration of how that conversion can take place. A couple of follow-up items with regards to the SUSE Linux Enterprise subscription elements involved here. There are some commercial considerations. First off, the commitment is to support customers who have a desire to move development infrastructure from a Leap 15 environment to a SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 15 SP1 environment today. As noted at the documentation link, this is a supported process. It is something that you could call SUSE for assistance with. And our partners and our services organization are readily able and willing to assist with customers who have needs in this regard. Again, the interoperability investment really supports an ecosystem that embraces a community-first development scenario and looking at developer ease of use and use cases where promotion to production environments, we could help potentially streamline that scenario, right? If you think about enterprise support and IHV, ISV certifications, this is a process that SUSE has been leading through for over 25 years in terms of looking at the relationships we have with the hardware communities and the software communities. And the idea would be to take advantage of those certifications and the extended life cycle with minimal disruption to any development that is taking place on the Leap platform. Meaning that if you remember, the Leap environment enjoys a 36-month maintenance commitment, where the SUSE Linux Enterprise code base enjoys a 10-year commitment of binary code compatibility and availability with certifications. One other caveat, we do not support the migration of SLE instances to OpenSUSE, meaning that if you deploy an instance with the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server Media Kit, it will always be a SUSE Linux Enterprise instance. Once a SLE, always a SLE. Now, a question that I'll pose at this point is whether or not there might be a better way to do this. In terms of closing out this conversation around interoperability with the OpenSUSE community, there's been a large amount of focus and initiative put into better alignment with OpenSUSE and looking at the long history of partnership and community engagement that we've driven with the OpenSUSE community. SUSE would like to offer a proposal for consideration to the community at large. Historically, we've had two primary OpenSUSE distributions looking at Leap and Tumbleweed, right? And Leap is source code aligned to SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, but the point of the matter here is that this is not necessarily binary compatibility. There are differences between the distributions still in terms of customizations that have gone into Leap, work that we could take on with the community with the goal of really looking at building a common binary code base, allowing for better consistency and better use cases to solve some key problems, right? So if you look at closing the Leap gap, the proposal at this point is to build a binary compatible Leap distribution that would allow for much easier migration between the open source community development release and the SUSE Linux Enterprise binaries. This bridges gaps in a number of areas, looking at user communities, developer communities. It also helps consolidate what I would call some structured choice for our different constituents that are consuming in the environment. And it sets the base for interoperability at a container management infrastructure level, looking at application runtime environment compatibility for containers built on the OpenSUSE distribution being 100% seamlessly supportable with the SUSE Linux Enterprise offerings if that type of support was required. We look at the summary for this proposal. Again, the offer to the community that is non-binding, it's not a mandate, it is an open discussion with the community, is to make SLE binaries and maintenance updates for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server freely available to the OpenSUSE community. This has several benefits, including the conversion scenario we looked at a few minutes ago in the demo being incrementally simpler to execute and allowing a better promotion to production scenario in terms of how people are using the distribution and how people are looking at OpenSUSE as a developer distribution. They're into what I would call mission critical deployment requirements and support requirements that could be fulfilled by SUSE. When we look at the OpenSUSE benefits for this proposal, this does provide an opportunity to increase influence, visibility, and contribution where OpenSUSE may not be as present, but SUSE might be present. Communities like the Cloud Foundry community and our platform as a service offering are very hungry for developer-supported infrastructure offerings from a use case perspective. And the development ecosystem could definitely benefit from a community perspective by having SUSE's developers more closely aligned with the community developers. And ultimately, this is going to lead to an increase in transparency with regards to things like feature request, requirements gathering and planning for new releases, and even bug consolidation between the distributions going forward. At the end of the day, the sources are provided, the binaries are public, and the packages can be still easily branched within the OpenSUSE community, allowing for the flexibility for end users, other developers outside of the SUSE organization to continue building packages with tools like the Open Build service that make it easy to integrate and put out newer versions or patched versions or just branched binaries with just a few clicks, allowing end users to build their own packages. To finish up here, there is a portal that has been launched out at the OpenSUSE website. The link is below. There is an exhaustive frequently asked questions that has been assembled by the community, along with the support of SUSE product management and our CTO office. This proposal was circulated first with the OpenSUSE board and ultimately launched as a community communication. And again, we're eager to have feedback from the community. And if we look at the current next steps for this proposal, there is an effort to bridge the gap between what is SUSE Linux Enterprise 15 SP2 and Leap 15.2, which are the next two incremental deliverables, and not integrating any changes in these two particular releases, but creating a jump release to bridge the gap to Leap 15.3 and SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 15 SP3, giving the community time to acclimate and really understand the impact, and for SUSE to also collaborate with the community on making sure we're building the best jointly built and released distribution that we can with the community as a whole. So as we're finishing up with QA, if you're happening to watch this on the launch day and at a couple other points, we'll schedule time where myself and Udo can potentially be available in the SUSECON Digital portal. We're happy to take questions. Our contact info is also available in the slides. We're definitely able to be contacted and happy to follow up with any questions that come up as part of the session. Udo, any passing closing words, remarks?
No, I think you said it all. Yeah, as said, we are available. Shoot your questions. We're happy to answer. And thanks for listening.
Okay. Well, there are also some resources that we can post here in terms of download locations and details on the Leap project and OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. You can definitely find more information related to SUSE Linux Enterprise at SUSE.com. And with that, I will wish you a happy SUSECON Digital. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.